If his father Gershon ben Chaim speak. Sarah Goldstein in memory of her husband Aryeh Yehuda ben Shmuel. Melon Haran Haller in memory of his father Avram ben Zed. Week of learning Mike Cohen, Mike Klein in memory of his father Yudit Tzvi ben Chaim. And today is what's the date?
20.
Today is what?
25.
25th. No individual dates of learning. May all the neshamas have an aliyah, all the kanken, a rafiyah, and some cloud Yisrael, Yeshiva,
Amen. Okay, today we're going to learn one of the most famous sugyas in the entire Talmud, and the truth is that part of it is enigmatic, but I'll explain in a moment. In any case, we're continuing the ideas of when a sale is maintained or when a sale is canceled. Okay, and this is a classic case. A person sells produce. Now we're talking about produce like grains or like legumes, which are both food and seed. That's the point. Now, there's a certain thing, grains and legumes, they're for eating, and therefore planting. But not everything is like that. So there are certain things, for example, like we're going to see like flax seeds, for example, which flax seeds, where not everybody eats. So when I came to Eretz Yisrael, it was a certain, the whole world was in upheaval those years, and so lots of alternative people were coming to Israel, and yeah. And they would serve you, a meal of alfalfa or things like all kinds of crazy things. So, but alfalfa seeds and this and that. But usually alfalfa seeds are for planting. For example, we'll see alfalfa, all kinds of things. There's all kinds of different things. So anyway, okay. If a person sells produce to his friend, and it's the type of produce, like I told you, like grains or legumes, which are both used for eating and for planting. Uzran, and the guy planted them. That's what he wanted them for. They didn't sprout because they were no good. They weren't good for, okay. Even flaxseed. I said alfalfa seed, flaxseed, I'm sorry. Flaxseed is what I meant to talk about. So even flaxseed, where most people do not buy flaxseed for eating. Most people buy flaxseed for planting. Okay. Even flaxseed. Yeah, right. They didn't specify. And the seller is not responsible to pay back for the lack of viability, because he says, listen, I sold them to you for eating. They were perfectly good for eating. There was eating seed I sold you, and not planting seed. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says no. He says already Gino. Now this is not an argument. There's an agreement. We'll see later. The Mishnah is missing, and it comes out that's not the case when it comes to garden seeds. For all kinds of garden vegetables, they're in a gina, okay, garden seeds, which usually people don't eat. Okay, people are not usually eating them. And then if they don't grow, then the guy is obligated to back them up.
He argues on flax too.
No, he doesn't argue. You're going to see this. He does not argue. He does not argue. No, you're going to see the Gemara say he doesn't argue. It's missing a piece. We're going to see. Everyone agrees when the things that where people don't. Where people buy them for planting, so then the guy has to back them up because they were supposed to be good for planting and they're not good for planting. Itamar, okay, we learn. This is the most famous case. A person sells an ox to his friend, okay? It turns out that the ox gores. So therefore what? The had gored in its history. So no, even once. Ox gored even once. Okay, so the halacha is what? And therefore, what? Nobody can handle an ox that's a gorer. Nobody keeps around for plowing, and all they can do is shecht it and take the meat. Rav Amar Haizem. So Rav says this is a fraudulent sale. The guy, okay, because and he has to get back his money. Okay, he says I want my money back, or obviously, or just give me an ox that plows. Shmuel Amar, okay, Yochel Amar, he says no. Shmuel says I'm sorry. The seller can say to him, "What do you mean? I sold you. My intention when we made you didn't specify that you wanted a plowing ox. I sold you an ox that's good for meat for shechting, and that's fine. So the deal's on." Isaac, just 1 second. Why should there even be an argument? Why should be the Rav says the deal is off and Shmuel says the deal is on? Well, let's look. He gathered the Zabel we see that this buyer is a person who always buys for. He's a butcher. He always buys them for meat. And if so it's obvious that even though I didn't specify, he's buying a meat ox, and therefore the seller is correct. And even Rav should agree. Pardon me. Even Rav should agree that the deal is on. And if this is a person who's just a farming guy and he buys only for plowing, okay, Laradia, then it's for plowing, and what even Shmuel should agree that the deal is off. The answer is no. But no, the case of the argument is by a person where it's not determined. There's a person who buys something that buys also for meat, and buys also for plowing. But so what? Okay, still, even so, let's look at the price. The price of a plowing ox is substantially more, much more than a sixth. Okay, more than a sixth. Okay, the price of a plowing ox is substantially more than an ox for meat. So let's take a look. Okay, so if it's a high price, if we paid the high price, the price was obviously for plowing, and Shmuel is correct. The deal's off. Pardon me. Rav is correct. Shmuel is correct, and the deal's off. Pardon me. How do we get to Rav and Shmuel? We get to Rav and Shmuel here. Yeah, do we get to Rav and Shmuel? So if he paid the high price, so then Rav is correct. The deal is off, and it puts it at low price. Then Shmuel is correct, and the deal is off. Mar says no. He says low. The case where they're arguing, not only is a case where we can't determine by the buyer, but also the price is equal. Why? The akir bisur become with the meiradia. Meat has become so expensive that the same price of a plowing ox is the same price as a meat ox. They have the same price. So Yachid might have to move. So if that's true, if it's exactly the same price, so then who cares what the deal was? He got the value that he paid. What's the problem? No, he says, still makes sense. Why? Because he wanted a plowing ox and he got a maximum he's good for meat, he's still gonna have to shecht it and sell the meat and buy the ox. Okay, so it's still a hassle. So he says, you take responsibility. You supply me with the plowing ox. I don't want to do it myself. So there's still an argument. Now, when we said that we still have a conscience. So the argument between Rav and Shmuel is whether Rav says what the deal is off, and Shmuel says the deal is on. Okay, but Rav says, listen. He says the guy says, listen, I wanted a plowing ox, and Shmuel says, listen, I'm sorry. He says, I sold you a meat ox. He says, either leka lishta lumine. If the seller has no money, so it says still what? There's still no thing because we have a rule. So he's still going to let him. But since it's the same money, so the buyer, even though it doesn't want it, she still has to accept the cow in terms of the money as payment. I mean, because people say, and that's the halacha. A person owes you money. Okay, pay for even take the worst junk, take brand. It doesn't matter. Value, take feathers, whatever. If you get the value, you take payment in anything. That's the halacha. I mean, if a guy doesn't have money, he can pay whatever he has. You can't force him. Okay, if he has no money. Okay, it says lo tzricha diko shlomini. The answer is no. The guy has money, and therefore what? And the buyer's saying, you take the trouble and get me a different ox, and the seller says no. You take the trouble and get yourself a different ox. So Rav Omar, so therefore, what's the argument? So everything is 50-50, equal. Rav Omar, Rav says that it is a fraudulent sale, and therefore what? And therefore the seller must reimburse the guy with his money with the other ox. It says, let's take the ox back and make good. Okay, why? Because he says basaru bazlina, because we follow the majority. Halacha is what? Acharabim lahata. So we follow the majority. Reuben larabya zavne. And we follow the most of the world. The most people who buy in the world, they buy cows for plowing. At least by them, that was the case. No, the average guy buys a cow to plow. Okay, Shmuel says no. It says Kiazlina Basarubi says you're making a mistake. The whole din of the Torah that we follow majorities, that's true in the court. That's true by prohibitions. The classic example: we have a shop and we have a town where 9 shops sell kosher meat, and 1 shop sells nevela. And you find meat in the street in that town, you're allowed to eat the meat. Why? Because it's nullified in the majority. Okay. Be sure. So that rule applies. The whole rule of follow the majority that applies right? When it comes to things that are permissible or forbidden, okay, but mamona, okay, no, but when it comes to money, we don't follow the majority. And once the majority is not koveya, not koveya, so then the seller always has the right to say, listen, I sold you, even though most people buy for flour, I sold you for meat. And the truth is, since we don't follow the majority, if you were so interested in buying a flowering cow, you should have specified. You should have specified. Since you didn't specify, you're out. Okay, we have a simon, okay, isha, the ebed, shar, shvar. So now we're gonna test as we usually do. So what do we do? And this I explained a bunch of times, and this is the process of the Gemara. When I can't prove something, which is what the Gemara is always interested. The Gemara is always interested in things that can't be proven. That's where investigative study comes in. When you can prove something, great. It's usually not an interesting discussion. You know what I mean? You just prove it and go on. We don't have to have a whole convention about it. But the whole point is now to come to conclusions. When we can't conclusively prove something, that's when the Gemara is interested. And what we do is now we bring arguments pro and con. Even though we can't conclusively demonstrate, but we keep bringing more and more circumstantial evidence to one side or the other and make a decision. Maybe. Okay, let me ask you a kasha. We'll see in a second who the kasha is to. Okay, we learned when it comes to kedushin. So we just say simply, that whether we always write a person has to give a ksuva to his wife. So we have a standard ksuva, and that is what for a girl who was never married before, it's masayim, 200 zuz. Okay, that's masan, and for a woman who is divorced, okay, or widowed, it is 100 zuz, 1 month. So now what happens is the girl lost her ksuva and the husband died and she's collecting from the estate, or a girl was divorced and she wants to collect from the husband, but she can't find her ksuva. So Meisha and Salman and Sigarsha. So it was a woman who was widowed or divorced and she's trying to collect respectively from the husband or from the estate, and she can't find her ksuva. She says, Basua, and she says, but I was a virgin when I got married. You owe me 200. Well, who? He or his heirs say, he says, no, Loki, it's not true. He says, that's not so. He says, I married you when you were a widow or a divorcee. I only owe you 100. So we said, what's the law? Okay, if there are witnesses that will testify, Enuma, there's an argument with Enuma is either around chuppah, like we're talking about, or Enuma is like a veil over her eyes to let her sleep. So it's like from the word from the Enuma to sleeping, we're sleeping. But the main point is what? That was the custom of a first marriage, right? Of a first marriage. So if we have witnesses that she went on the Hinuma, which identifies her as a basula, kasuvta masayim. Then a ksuva, he pays her 200. So you see, but take a look. Time of the only reason why the guy's going to pay 200 is because she has witnesses that she appeared as a virgin. Okay, but if there are no witnesses, she doesn't get 200. Why not? Why don't you follow them? Most majorities by them, most marriages, okay, rov nashim basulas nisis. Most marriages, most girls that are getting married are married as virgin. That was by them. That was the case. Ravina. So Ravina says no. He says you're right. He said, but he said the truth is so we have a kasha and a rav. So since you see we don't follow the majority, we have a kasha and a rav. We don't follow, but you don't follow the majority when it comes to money matters. Now. We have to realize one thing: the word majority. Remember, I've discussed many times, is an assumption. It's an assumption that the Torah allows us to make, but it's not airtight. And there's a thing called areyasa. There's something that challenges or lessens the strength of a majority. We find something suspicious. Areyasa means something bad, but it means what? Something that makes us suspicious, and maybe we can't rely on this assumption. He said, here we're going to say what? He said, what the problem is, he says, here, really normally, says Rob, we wouldn't rely on the majority, even for money matters. But here, there is something that makes us suspicious and doesn't allow us to follow the majority. Because we can say, Rov Nashim Basulas Nisos. Yes, you're right. He says it's true that most women get married virgins, and only almonas, and only minority are widows or divorcees. But every girl who is a virgin, there's a noise. Everybody knows about it. Okay, this girl. Since what? Since if she can't bring witnesses, so there wasn't well known. So the majority is lessened. Okay, is made bad. Okay, is made bad. There's a reyasa. It is marred. Okay, why? Because we're suspicious of it. Because come on, he says she can't find a witness. How can she not find a witness? Everybody would have known. She went out with they knew her. Gemara says no. Says the Gemara says get out of here. He says you can't be true what you're saying. Our kasha is correct. There's a rove here and you're not following it. It's not the halacha is not like that. Why? Because and don't tell me what that it's suspicious. He says he calling this basulas yeshdam call. He says if you're telling me is what that we're learning is what that any girl who was basula everybody would have known about it. Geek aid in my hobby. So then why is it the halacha that if she has witnesses that she went out and numa what so what? Why do you give her 200? Me the less not call since there were nobody else except for these two. Okay, Sadi Shikrinu, you have to call them false witnesses. Yeah, there must be false witnesses, or at least legally they're false witnesses, because the fact that every girl is known and they're claiming it's a basula and nobody knew about it. Remember, if they were actually testifying that she was a virgin, they knew they were doctors. Okay, yeah, but they're not testifying. They're only testifying that she went out with the sign of a basula. So if nobody else knew that sign, obviously there's something wrong.
Pregnant girl in the white dress.
Yeah. So therefore, what? So it must be really what? It must be really right. It must be really that there's a majority here. We don't follow it. Allah is not like Rob. Ellen, no, don't worry. We can still defend Rob. Rove Hanisas Basulis Yishim Call. We have to just modify what we said. Most women get married virgins, and most women who get married virgins, there's a voice. It's well known. Most, but not everybody. So it's not airtight. So you can't say, well, nobody knew these witnesses are alive. Zoo hold the call. This one, Shitzi has no call. Nobody heard about Israel over. She loses the robe. But if they're witnesses, it's since only most women, have a call. So once you have witnesses, we don't have to disqualify. Okay, Toshma. Okay, so we defended Rob. Toshma. Yeah. Now let me ask you Kashi the other way. We learned the mochav the chaber person sells a slave to their friend. Benim tzaganav okav Eustace. Huh? Toshma. A mochav the chaber. A person sold the slave to his friend. Benim tzaganav okav Eustace. And it turns out when the guy's a thief, or he's a gambler, or he's a kidnapper. Okay, any of those things depends how you read it. Okay, but the point is he's not so good. Okay, Higio doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's a good deal. The deal goes on. The deal goes on. Okay, well, okay, and we can't cancel it. Why? We're going to see in a minute because that's expected from slaves. Yeah, it comes with the territory.
$10 on the ground.
Yeah, it comes with the territory. List him Mizuya, but if it turns out the slave is an armed robber, he goes and robs people and kills them if they kills them. Oh, Muhtav Lamachus, or the guy had been sentenced to death by the government. So this is a guy, whether because he's already been sentenced to death, or anybody that goes out of armed robbery is going to get killed eventually. You got a slave is going to die, not a very good slave. Omerla, he says to him, so he says, listen, he says, here's your slave back, thank you very much, give me my money back. He cancels the deal. So we say, Ratio, what's the beginning of the bride? Which says what? That if he's just a thief or a gambler, etc. My time, why is the deal done? There isn't because most slaves are that way. And you see what? And therefore what? So you see that when you do follow the majority, you follow the majority and the deal is on. So you see what? And the Kasha says, no, you make it. It's not that the majority of slaves like that. All slaves. Now, it doesn't mean statistically that 100 slaves out of 100 slaves are thieves or are gamblers. It means to say that they're all of that nature. They're all of that nature, and therefore what? Regardless of what the actual number is, that is to be expected. Like I said, it comes with the territory, and that's to be expected. And that's to be expected. And therefore what? So we have no kasha to Shmuel. So far we attacked and defended both Rav and Shmuel, and it remains the even Steven. That's a daf. It's a very short daf today.
By the way, Oscar uses kidnappers.
Yeah, I said to you, some people, could use this as one explanation is a gambler, one name is a kidnapper.
But isn't a kidnapper liable to the death penalty?
So that's a good question.
He sells the guy.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I mean, it's a tricky thing. If you just kidnap, you get Marcus.
If you sell them like.
And you kidnap a Jew,
but we'll double check.
And you sell him to a non-Jew as a slave.
Right.
Then you get the death penalty.
So Yosef's brothers were high of the death.
Well, they claimed that they had a rationale.
Yeah, everyone.
Guilty with an explanation?
Well, they believe Yerushalayim means something.
But that's the period of the on Yom Kippur. The
Scary,
Holy Malchus.
Scary. Well, they didn't, they just stole shoes.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.